On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use. Welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 58, created on October 26, 2023. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me are Jeff in Minnesota and Neil on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. Tonight I'm drinking New Holland Brewing Dragon's Milk Stout.
And I'm going with a topical theme from Brooklyn, the Kings County Brewers Collective Dirty Prancing Double IPA.
And I simply have a Hendrick's Gin on the rocks. You can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat. And just the audio is available on Spotify by searching for Green Bay Chat. Really only two things to talk about this week. One is we're going to be looking at the Week 8 matchup of the Minnesota Vikings coming into town, but really, it's all about the GBC podcast going to Denver. We did our big road trip this year, the Packers at the Broncos, and we had a long, great weekend with friends to talk about not just the game, but everything that we did in the Centennial State. The first thing to note is that 4 people went to the football game. But Jeff, you're not in that picture. What the hell happened?
Well, John, sometimes goofy shit happens. So last week when we recorded the podcast, I had COVID and didn't know it. Later on in the week, I did test. I tested positive, and therefore I did not travel. So I wasn't there. I missed it. I appreciate you keeping me up to date on via social media and lots of pictures you were sending me. I certainly appreciated that. But yeah, shit, I wasn't there.
You did get to watch the game on the TV though, so you did interact during the game on top of
such as it was. Yeah, I got to watch the game. So I lived vicariously all weekend with a sick family, and because everybody's on the mend now.
Glad to hear everybody is better, and I did get to briefly see you as I passed through Minneapolis, but we'll note that Jeff's not in the pictures and wasn't part of the tailgating, but you were there in spirit for sure, as we did, like I said, share information with you. But let's talk about the game itself, Neil. So we did get a person to join us in the game. Your sister-in-law, Katie, who is actually from the Denver area, really last minute said, sure, I'll hop on a plane and fly home for the weekend and she said she'd watch a Broncos game. I don't know what she was talking about. She was going to the Packers game, but she wore some funny jersey and she joined us. It was great of her, Neil.
Yeah, I mean, it made for a much prettier picture with Katie instead of Jeff. But yeah, that ugly color kind of destroys all the favorable elements there.
Well, let's talk about the game itself first. We were there, and for those of you who watched on TV, I can tell you that in person, it was just as uninspiring in the first half as it probably was on television. A flat performance. The team came out, and Jeff, the asshats did not fail you. We get our first missed field goal of the season, but plenty of stats to talk about in the first half. Second half will be a lot better to talk about. So, Neil, start with the misery, all right? Get the crap out of the way.
I think just go with our theme of all year. Just starting out with the first drive, we went 3 and out. Second drive, we made it to 5 plays. We made it to 6 plays actually on our third drive. But our first 3 drives, 14 plays for 39 yards total. And I think your starting point is just look at the first quarter numbers. The first quarter numbers, we had 1 first down. Denver had 7. We had 24 yards. Denver had 128 yards. They outgained us by 104 yards in the first quarter alone. And while that's not the good way to start out the game.
Especially coming off of a bye week, for Christ's sake.
Well, that's what I said, on last week's show. Get your hot takes ready. Oh, you had 11 days to prepare, and this is what you came out with? Or, gee, way to come alive after the bye week. And it certainly did not fail. Unfortunately, the offense just doesn't seem, I don't know if it's inspired. They're just flat. They come out flat. They don't really push for a big play. There's just nothing there to even grab onto to say, yeah, let's build off of that, because there's just not enough plays. I mean, in the old days, when you script your first 15 plays and you don't even get to 10 in the first 3 drives, it's kind of tough.
On TV, yes, very uninspiring as well. And so I know, we could see on TV that there are lots of Packer fans there. We could hear you cases even, but the way they came out, was there any energy in the stadium as well with Packer fans, or was it just sort of this resignation that, oh shit, here we go again?
There was plenty of energy as far as Packers fans. Somebody said there was an estimate of over 20,000 Packers fans there, and I actually thought it was even more than that. It seemed to me we're like 35-40%, something in that ballpark of the total number of fans there. I think the most discouraging element as far as the game was concerned wasn't just that our offense started out poorly, it's that the Denver offense also started out really well, or conversely, our defense did not go well. Their first drive, they went 11 plays for 62 yards with a couple of third down conversions, and thankfully they had a holding penalty that kept that 3 points rather than 7 points. And then at the end of the first quarter, their third drive, they had an 11-play, 70-yard drive that brought it to 6-0. And again, thankfully, it was only 2 field goals, but they had already had 2 long drives in that first quarter. And it was disconcerting at one level that our offense wasn't playing well, but the fact that our defense was essentially being run over that entire first quarter, I think is what led to more dread in my mind than even the offense having its struggles. They certainly compounded one another that, okay, we don't have our offense or our defense going today. And thankfully things changed midway through the second quarter.
And it really is the defense, like you said, Neil, they got run over, but they also were lucky enough, I think, to get away with a field goal on those 2 drives to make it only 6-0 rather than 14-0. But to me, really, it is the big story there is the offense. We're talking about a Denver Broncos defense that had 70 points dropped on it a couple of weeks early. As noted, they just are one of the worst defenses through 7 games in the history of the NFL. And the Packers offense just simply could not, in the first half anyway, move the ball on this team. Nothing was working.
We go down 6-0, and we still had another crappy drive ahead of us. But our final drive, our final real drive, I should say, in the second quarter, we actually started to move the ball okay. And I think when I look back at what are the problems that we had in the game, it was that last long drive that we had in the second quarter that was the real problem. And just to emphasize this, in the second quarter, Denver and Green Bay actually had the same number of first downs. As far as yards are concerned, it was 76 versus 81. So the overall numbers in the second quarter were actually getting close. And we had that long drive. We started our 28, 11-play, 47-yard drive. We get down to the Denver 20, and then on a 3rd and 4, Rasheed Walker had a false start. And it's sort of been a story of the season that we get into positions where either on first down, we take a penalty, so we're going long and behind the 8 ball right off the bat, or alternatively, we get close on 3rd down, and then we do something where we shoot ourselves in the foot and make it impossible. And that false start on the 3rd down really pushed us 5 yards further back by the time that we went for the field goal. And I think if we're 5 yards closer, Anders Carlson makes that field goal. And it's a huge difference in this game if it's 6-3 at halftime versus 9-0 at halftime. And I think if we had made that field goal, it would have been a 6-3 halftime game. And I think we'd have had an entirely different opinion going into the second half.
So the thing about the field goal from Carlson is, Neil, as you remember, when we were in the stadium, we really couldn't tell right away if it was good. We were waiting for the signal from the officials. Neil, I presume you went back and watched the game already. How did it look?
I love the condensed game, and it really was a situation that if that kick were 5 yards closer, I think that goes in, and it's a 6-3 game. At that point, there was only 41 seconds left. We kick off into the end zone. And I think Denver does not have that really strong drive where they move themselves down to field goal range, went 50 yards in 6 plays, 36 seconds. And I think on top of the Anders Carlson miss, that last drive that Denver made that just ran all over our defense so quickly, some big Russell Wilson plays, that was just really discouraging heading into halftime.
Yeah, it very much deflated the defense to see a guy who, in my opinion, was washed up 2 years ago to just really run down the field against the Packer defense.
Well, and that's been the case all season in terms of, 1 or 2 plays. If they go away, we win the game probably, right? I mean, we lose the game by 2 points. So we just talked about a 6-point swing here, and that's what I think is the most frustrating. The margin of error is basically 0. And so something either has to break our way. But if we screw something up, generally, this season anyway, it's come back to bite us in the ass. The number of games we've lost, we could be 5-1 because we've not been blown out of these games for the most part, except for really the Detroit game. But even, points-wise at the end, I mean, these have, for the most part, have been close games. They hinge on just a couple goofy plays, and that's enough to either be demoralizing or, from a coaching standpoint, from a bad luck standpoint, from not being able to execute properly who knows?
Yeah, when we look back at the Saints game and we talked about how that final drive or that ability to come back in the fourth quarter was something that should be inspiring to this team, to say that you're never really out of it. I think we kind of felt that way, Neil, going into halftime. We were down 9, but I think we were keeping in the back of our mind, boy, this is a second half team, or this team's going to come out firing in the third quarter. And we were holding on to that. And sure enough, that third quarter really did explode for the Packer offense.
Yeah, the third quarter was absolutely beautiful as far as us moving the ball. And I just love us getting the ball and taking the ball all the way down the field, or at least almost all the way down the field on that first drive. Our first drive of the second half, 12 plays, 64 yards, some key third down conversions, including a Jordan Love run, a beautiful throw from Wicks to Jones. So a little bit of trickery that actually worked for a change. You know, who knows? Maybe trickery might actually work occasionally. But a 3rd and 4 where Jordan Love had a great pass to Wicks as well. And we just got close. And unfortunately, we only got the 3 points out of that. And this is a case where, you got to the 1st and 10 at the 17, got all the way to the 11. And then on 3rd and 4, we couldn't get the completion. And it's those little things that's 3 points rather than 7. That's another one of those big moments in the game where if we had been a little bit more efficient on those last 3 downs, maybe this is a different game already, even after what had happened in the first half.
To give you an idea of just how deflated and uninspired the Broncos fans are, there were Bronco fans sitting behind us. And after that field goal, the gentleman behind me said, "Hey, don't worry about it. You guys are going to win 10-9. I've seen this game before." To which I said, "That's no good. I took Green Bay minus 1.5. I need him to cover the spread." But he just seemed like he didn't think that Denver was going to hold on to this lead. He didn't think that Denver was going to even show anything in the second half. You know, kind of the way Green Bay is flat in the first half, he was expecting the Broncos to be flat in the second half. I was kind of hoping they would be, but we certainly made a run for it. I mean, the second half, we made it a little bit more exciting than that first half was, for sure.
But having said that, after we scored that field goal, Denver went right back down and scored a touchdown immediately. They had another one of their long drives, 75 yards drives, 7 plays, including a whole defensive holding penalty on a 3rd and 3 that was devastating. Some trickery as far as the touchdown pass, but we were down 16-3 at this point after that drive. There was not a lot that was looking encouraging, even though we are a third quarter team. We had to do something. The time was now to do something, and we came back with a drive that did something.
Why is it that it's always like the third quarter that is the quarter? Jordan Love and the Packers offense like leads the NFL in the third quarter and the second half in a lot of offensive category. It obviously hasn't translated into a lot of wins, but I mean, just like huge margins above and beyond, not only what happens in the first half, which is basically nothing, but just like I said, leading the NFL scoring differential, second half points per game, second half passing yards. Why is this?
And why can't those plans be adjusted earlier? But going into that statement, right, in the third quarter, the Packers had 8 first downs to 4 for Denver. We were 3 of 4 on third downs in the third quarter. We had 134 yards in offense in that third quarter alone, including 85 passing and 49 run. I will note that in the first half, if you exclude that stupid 14-yard run at the end of the first half, we only had 86 yards total offense in the first half. We went 134 in the third quarter alone. We went 107 in the fourth quarter as well. Essentially, each of our second half quarters was better than the entire first half of football as far as our offense was concerned.
Yeah, if we're talking about making adjustments, certainly making halftime adjustments is good. But to answer your question, Jeff, why are there not in-game adjustments happening? And I think that's what's become frustrating. And I think that we've even heard this week, I didn't get the exact wording on it in the press conference with Joe Barry, but it sounds like the defense isn't really making those adjustments either, like on the fly. And guys are going into the locker room at halftime not really knowing what to expect. And then they get the new game plan for the second half and they come out with it. But yeah, there's got to be more adjustments in game.
Yeah, why is Jordan Love in the third quarter by passer rating the highest ranked quarterback? Like by far.
By far, yeah.
In the third quarter. What sense does that make almost? And I did see that it looks like Adam Stenavich, the offensive coordinator, now he's no longer on the sidelines. Joe Barry. So he's now up in the press box as well. Obviously in Denver didn't really seem to make that much difference, but it sounds like, they're just trying different things, different perspectives. And again, the margin of error just is so tiny that that's how they're managing to lose these games. So Neil, take us down the home stretch here.
Well, let's talk about that first touchdown drive for the Packers. Again, 9 plays, 75 yards. Starts out with a 23-yard pass to Watson. We have a couple of running plays. We have a 3rd and 6 and get a defensive pass interference and continue on with good plays. We got play to Musgrave. And then on a 3rd and 7, that distance that has been very difficult for us all season, a great Jordan pass to Jayden Reed to get that first down. Jones with some running plays. And then we get a 2nd down and 9 from their 16. And we have that throw from Love to Dobbs that ended up being right in front of us. It was right in that corner, right above Katie's head where that Dobbs catch was. And we saw that whole motion as far as the catch and the fight and the roll. And it looked like a touchdown for sure. It didn't look like this was something that was to be called an interception. And it was just perfectly right in front of us. And yeah, at that point, it's 16-10 and we're back. We're within a score. A touchdown puts us in the lead. So this was a perfect situation.
I think we definitely felt the momentum swing there as well. The crowd, I think, the Broncos crowd felt it as well, even though they had the 6-point lead. Like I said, the guy behind us, I know he was not optimistic about this game. And after that, we put together 3 decent drives there, Neil, and we're ready to keep rolling.
Yeah, and our defense then stepped up as well. And Denver takes a 3 and out. Our defense forced 2 3 and out. So our defense was very Jekyll and Hyde as far as the games are concerned. Denver did have 5 scoring drives, and all of them, except for one, were over 50 yards, several over 70 yards. So our defense had problems for stretches, but they also had stretches where they stepped up. And a 3 and out, when you just get within a score lead, you get the ball back. That is a perfect opportunity for your offense to really make a statement. And we've talked about this as far as the Packers defense being gassed because the other offense running on us. Guess what? Now it was our turn to run on that Denver's defense that only had 3 plays of a break.
And that really sets things up, Neil. It's 16-10 and we're feeling the momentum, and boy, lightning really strikes on this drive.
It was just one of those drives where Jordan Love looked good. Our running game looked good. We did a mix of running and passing, great pass to Musgrave, but that included the unsportsmanlike conduct that knocked Musgrave out. And that may have been a problem later on, but it was a great catch by Musgrave as far as moving down. We had a number of key runs. We went for it on 4th and 1, in which there was a Love to Sims conversion. So we made it on a 4th and 1 once. Continuing on the drive, big Dylan run, a huge run for Jordan Love for 10 yards. We got down to a 3rd and 2, and then we had something that was potentially a fatal error, the types of errors that have bothered us all season. On that 3rd and 2, DeGuara had a false start, and that goes to a 3rd and 7. And we get back a few of those yards, and we go for it on 4th and 2. But this time it worked, and it worked with a little bit of trickery, a little bit of magic, a little bit of luck. Whatever it takes.
A lot of magic.
We will take that touchdown with the assist from Dobbs to Jayden Reed.
Right. So that's the proverbial 1-6-3 in the playbook if you're playing baseball, right?
That was bizarre. And so then you're thinking, okay, well, this is bouncing in their favor. Maybe this, the errors kind of prior to the game, because let's face it, that other touchdown was contested, the almost interception, so now we've had 2 would have been ruled mercifully touchdowns. The second one obviously was caught, but just like, okay, the ball is bouncing kind of funny here. So again, now we've got some momentum, maybe a come from behind victory because we've come all the way back now, right?
Now we're ahead. We're actually ahead at this point.
17-16. So now what we have to do defense is hold them.
And that's asking a lot of this defense, right? I mean, I think, I'm so torn on this because of the way the defense is played. You got to admit, first of all, we hold them to 3 field goals to this point, and it would be nice to keep them to a field goal, which happens, but then it becomes a clock game as well.
Although it wasn't really a clock game. I mean, the problem was it was another sustained Denver drive. And going to your point about the defense, the Denver Broncos only had 47 yards of offense in the 4th quarter compared to 107 for Green Bay. They only had 2 first downs, but unfortunately, those were on that last real drive that Denver had. They took the ball from their 25 and converted a couple of 3rd downs, got to something that is in Denver field goal range and certainly easy Denver field goal range, kick the field goal to go ahead. And I think the only thing that we can say is we're lucky that Preston Smith made a tackle on that third down, so they didn't get another first down and chew up even more time on the clock. So we're down, but the fact is there's still 3:50 left in the game at this point when we get the ball.
Here's an example where, okay, it's a young team. They're learning, again, the defense does hold them to a field goal. So, okay, we drive down. We don't need a touchdown to win outright, right? All we need is 3 points to win. We're thinking, okay, and all right, based on how things have gone, but why not, right? I mean, there's, like Neil said, there's enough time, and so I not be able to drum for a field goal. And that way it started, things looked pretty good initially.
There was a beautiful pass right up the middle from Love to Dillon, where Dillon just kept running over everyone on that Denver defense.
Yeah.
We get down to Denver's 44-yard line, and this is at the 2-minute warning. So we're basically, I was thinking in Denver, if we had to kick a field goal from here, we could take a field goal from here, from that Denver 44-yard line, and 2 minutes, 2 timeouts left, while there's not even any need to worry about time. But that's where us shooting ourselves in the foot came into play again. And unfortunately, this time it was a veteran, and a veteran who's not had a great year this year. And somebody that at the beginning of the season, you say, well, this is going to be one of the anchors of our offense. That Elkton Jenkins holding penalty was an absolute killer, took us from Denver territory back into our own. And I think that's what in the end brought the hero ball that ended up being the dagger in the end.
Yeah, and definitely an over-analysis of that last play, the interception play, and whether you go to Dillon on the check down on that. But this is something where I think that looking at Jordan Love and wanting to build the confidence in himself and his team, I'm not going to argue with this throw. He gets it downfield. The safety is just in the right spot, playing center field the right way, gets a nice interception. But it play that I think we felt the momentum, and we felt like this is something that could work for the Packers in this situation.
But let's talk about who was the receiver on that play as well. Samori Toure was that downfield receiver, because Christian Watson had been injured on the play before. And we've just had really bad luck with injuries this year. And if Watson is on that play and he's another step ahead, we win the game possibly, if with a slightly longer throw that Love throws, because he's throwing to the faster Watson.
It was very unfortunate on a number of levels and very deflating. Could he have checked it down? But again, we're sort of put in this position that we have to make up more ground after we lost the ground. Like I said, if we just would have knelt down twice from the 44, maybe we can go right. And this, and probably most importantly, this is the only turnover of the game. Yeah. For either team. I think I texted around halftime or whatever, at this point, again, thin margin of error, and that the turnover or a turnover could seal this game. And, some other weird things, that there was one sack by both teams. And as you alluded to, that was the Preston Smith. It was basically a sack for no loss. Both teams had the exact same number of net passing yards. There was a lot of things equal in this game. And just the fact that we generate a turnover and we lose the game on a turnover, that's I think what's just one of those head scratchers where it's like, come on.
I'm still going back to the penalties on our offensive line. That field goal attempt was 5 yards longer because of the Rasheed Walker false start. The Jenkins holding is what put us in that 2nd and 20, 3rd and 20, more desperate situation. And it's mistakes like that. Those are obviously not Jordan Love mistakes that put us in those bad situations.
I agree, Neil. We talked about firing coaches, looking for Matt LaFleur's head, Love's head. Joe Barry sort of survived this because the defense, again, held the opposing offense to under 20 points yet again.
That under 20 points part, I can't be inspired by that when they had 5 scoring drives and only punted twice. It was those long drives in the end that killed us. And yes, the defense played well enough that we should have been able to win, but they did not have a dominant performance against Denver. They had a performance that if the offense plays well, we're probably going to win. But I'd like to see a little bit more from our defense as far as them not having 5 long scoring drives in the game.
Well, just forcing a turnover or two, right? I mean,
they haven't forced a fumble since early in week 1 and getting a turnover. The other thing too, that defense really Rashawn Gary gets 2 hurries on the first 2 plays of the game on Russell Wilson, and then is relatively quiet the remainder of the game. It's that inconsistency and it's that inability to force either a turnover or just force that 3 and out.
Well, just looking at a couple of those types of statistics. So the Packers had only 3 quarterback hits in the entire game. They only had 9 quarterback pressures in the game, no passes defended, only 3 tackles for losses. And as far as our defense and the turnovers are concerned, we only have 5 takeaways on the year. That ranks 28th in the NFL. And our numbers say our defense is a very middle of the road defense. Yes, they're not a bottom of the league defense, but with the experience and the number of high draft picks they have, you'd expect them, certainly going into the year, we said we need our defense to be playing at a really high level. And we have not had our defense play consistently at a really high level.
100% agree.
Definitely consistency is the key, right? I think we would love a better defensive scheme as well. This is a team that, as you said earlier, Jeff, could have more than 2 wins. We're in a couple of 1-possession ball games. But when we look at statistically, we knew there was going to be growing pains this season. The one statistic that matters is the final score. So the growing pains are there. But when we look at numbers, I mean, Jordan Love still has relatively decent numbers with the 10 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He's at just over 1,200 yards. So, I mean, we're looking at a 3,500-yard passing season, albeit in 17 games. But 3,500 yards is going to surpass expectations and on pace for 28 touchdowns, as well as, maybe 20 interceptions. But, and then Jaden Reed, as a rookie, is going to get himself in some rookie numbers as far as all time, and maybe 4th and 5th all time, in having similar rookie seasons as a James Jones or a Greg Jennings or even a Sterling Sharp. And it's not terrible. There's a lot to build on with this team.
Yeah, and just if you look at the statistics on Jordan Love, his QBR, the 0 to 100 score that ESPN uses, he was rated as 77.8 in that game, even with that late interception, which is discounted because of the Hail Mary nature of it. 77.8 QBR for that game and a 90.8 traditional quarterback rating. In no stretch of the imagination is that a bad game by a quarterback. And Jordan Love got the ball to 10 different receivers over the course of the game. So he's looking around. He's not focusing on one guy. He's getting the ball into different places. And as I said, I rewatched the game and I thought Jordan Love looked really good for a lot of the game. He looked better on the rewatch than I was thinking watching it live, as I'm having all of the emotion of all the negative things we're doing come into play. Jordan Love had a lot of really solid plays throughout that entire game. I was really encouraged on the rewatch of where we are with our quarterback right now.
I don't want to rain on your parade here, Neil, but so our leading receiver was a tight end with not a lot of production from the wide receivers. Dylan was effective for the most part running the ball. And as you alluded to earlier, that catch, and he was just bowling people over. But is Aaron Jones really hurt? Where was Aaron Jones? He had 8 rushes, 35 yards.
In the end, he only had 23 snaps in the game. And I think that's just where we are right now. I mean, that final drive, there was essentially an absence of Aaron Jones on the play. And I think that the 23 snaps is intentional. I don't know what we're going to do about that until he's fully healthy. But, going on to your statement about the number of receptions with Musgrave, our top number of receiving yards was also AJ Dillon. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of room to grow as far as where our receivers are right now. That's certainly been a major talking point this week, as far as our receivers are just not running the routes consistently. They're not running in and putting their feet and their hands where they need to be. Love seems to be throwing it off and where it needs to go, and it's just not the players aren't there. And Dobbs and Watson missed a lot of time last year as receivers. They're really still at the end of their first year as wide receivers. As far as their experience is concerned.
They haven't gained that much experience, unfortunately, this year. They're arguably still almost playing out their rookie season. And then you've obviously got Musgrave, who's a rookie as well, and he's been hurt again. So what is this team capable of? I mean, are we looking at a 4-win season here? Are looking,
I mean, when you look at historically, I think that realistically, we were looking at Aaron Rodgers' first year. He had 6 wins, and I think that we probably expected that from this team, but we definitely got greedy looking at the schedule because we realized just how bad some of these other teams are, and we kept talking about the Raiders and the Broncos. These are 2 teams that still, you look at them on paper, they stink. The Broncos fans aren't going to lie to you; they stink. Look at what happened to the Raiders against the Bears this week. They stink. So it really doesn't say much for this Packers team that they can't beat these teams that stink. And we got a couple other stinkers coming up on the schedule here. Again, the growing pains of putting everything together to get 4 quarters of football to get a win and move forward.
But the biggest thing is that our team is going to continue to get better because they are young. Young teams get better as the year goes on. And unless we keep having injuries just devastating this offense and this defense the way that they have this year, and we cannot discount the absence of Jair as far as this game is concerned. We can't discount the absence of Devondre Campbell. We did not have Savage for half the game. We did not have Wyatt for half the game. We are still missing a fair number of players. And obviously they're the players that are still coming back and just building their way up to full game speed. And Stokes, again, he's on the IR after 4 special teams plays. Not to mention Bakhtiari. Injuries are going to make any team's job more difficult, and losing some of your most experienced players to injury is even worse. And I honestly, if we have all of our players there, do we win the last 2 games? I think we might.
And to get a totally different perspective on the game, we're going to bring in a guest now, the pride of Colorado State University, and Neil, someone who willingly married into your family. Katie, thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming to the game with us. Tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. I am drinking a Westvleteren 12, which has been often called the best beer in the world. And since the Broncos were the best team on Sunday, I figured it would be appropriate to drink. Cheers.
All right.
Well played. Well played.
All right, Katie, thanks for joining us. Let's move on with the program.
Oh, hey, look at the time.
Katie, you definitely just jumped right into it. You know, the opportunity arose and you said, hell yeah, I'm going to go home to Denver and watch a football game. And you did hang out at the Packer bar, to your credit, on Saturday night. Compare that to your experience with Broncos fans over the years.
I got to give Packers fans credit. Y'all know how to party, and y'all know how to put on a really good time. It was no surprise that event was full of excited people wearing Packers jerseys from across every decade, drinking a lot of beer and enjoying each other's company. So I will hand it to all of you. You travel well. I had a good time.
Talking about traveling well, though, you've been to a fair number of games at Mile High Stadium, or whatever iteration of it's been called over the years. Have you ever seen Mile High taken over by opposing fans quite as much as that game?
Never. I would almost say that the Packers fans, it was almost 50-50. At least that's how it felt for me in the section that we were sitting in. There were a lot of Packers fans there. But I mean, it was fun. It was a good time. Everyone was really enjoying themselves. I'm sorry that the score was not on the Packers side. Good for Broncos fans. We needed to get that second win of the season, but it was good. Everyone was having fun and cheering, and I could have done a little less with the Go Pack Go chant, but it was still fun.
That's how you know we're there. We announce our presence with authority.
Very much so.
The Broncos obviously have had a tough season. What were you feeling during that first half, though, as the Packers continue to do, as you know, being married to my brother, and you're the greatest saint in human history as far as I'm concerned, St. Catherine, for marrying my brother. But at any rate, given that the Broncos had a tough season and you're basically being dominant in the first quarter and certainly strong enough in the second quarter, you end up at halftime with a 9-0 lead. You had almost 2.5 times as many yards in the first half as we did. What are you feeling in that first half?
With how the season has gone, it was hard to feel confident. I think I told you, Neil and John, actually, I told both of you that this game was going to be decided on which quarterback was able to lose in a totally different way. So I kept thinking that through this game and thinking, how is Russ Wilson going to mess something up? Or how is there going to be another interception or another fumble at the very end of the game, which happened to the Packers, but how is he going to screw this up? And it was, I know I gloated a little bit. I had to. I mean, it comes with the territory when the Broncos are actually winning. But I was nervous throughout the entire game. I'm not going to lie. I was not confident that the Broncos were going to win.
Well, then let's go into that second half. You know, obviously you've watched plenty of Packers games with me and Mark this year. You knew that the Packers were a third quarter team. And in the second half, the Packers had 14 first downs to 6 for the Broncos. The second half, the Packers had 231 yards to 130 for the Broncos. Jordan Love was 12 of 19, 147, 2 touchdowns in the second half. Completely different team. What were you thinking up until that final interception?
I was thinking that the Broncos were going to end up losing again and be 1-6. Clearly, the Packers went into the locker room and came up with the game plan on how they needed to play against the Broncos after the first half. Whereas on the Broncos side, it didn't seem like there was any adjustment to how they should be playing against the Packers. Clearly, the Packers were the better team in the second half, and missing that first quarter field goal hurt, and then that, of course, that last interception hurt. As much as I bleed orange and blue, I'm still not, and I love the fact that we won. I'm still not confident in the team. It just seems like there's too many pieces of the team puzzle missing, and we are in a really hard conference. So I don't know how many more wins we're going to get this year.
After the game, we're walking out together. We walked out of the stadium together in our group. The comment was made about the Broncos fans themselves, because we passed a lot of them, that they didn't look happy. They didn't look elated. They just simply looked relieved. Did you get that feeling as well?
Because I felt the same way. I mean, it was a relief that we could finally get another number in the win column. The past few years have been really hard to watch the Broncos. And this season especially, we're not going to talk about the Miami game. We'll just forget about that. But it was a relief to finally win a game. Finally.
Yeah, I mean, I think your biggest joy in that game of winning was actually being to taunt me rather than anything about the happiness of how great the Broncos are as a team and how this is a springboard for them in the rest of the season.
Neil, it's so fun to taunt you every once in a while. I don't get to do it that often, but it's glorious when I do.
Do you want to gloat about your bocce ball victory as well in taunting?
I'm still disappointed, though, that you all were talking with the bartender when I made that fantastic throw and earned Dave and myself 4 points. So I didn't realize that you all were distracted when I made that amazing throw.
But you definitely made sure the rest of the family knew that Neil was not superior at bocce as well.
It was 6 points into a 15-point game. It was
but you also lost the first one, Neil.
Yeah, but Katie lost that first one too. So
to be fair, we lost it together, so it's okay. But I again, it's so fun to gloat, and when I beat Neil at something, so he's so easy.
Let's have a bocce family rematch soon.
Done. Let's do it.
Katie, let's take a look at big picture of the Broncos here, kind of going through the history. You're old enough that you remember Super Bowls 32 and 33. There's a little bit of a downward turn. Then Peyton Manning comes around, revives this team. The defense is revived. Champ Bailey is a Hall of Famer. DeMarcus Ware comes in. You guys win another Super Bowl. But now, over the last 10 years, that pendulum has been swinging the other way. We mentioned Russell Wilson. It was a big surprise coming into town within the last 2 years. Talk about where that pendulum is swinging and what you see as the future for this team.
Unfortunately, I think Russ Wilson is checked out. He just doesn't seem like he's having fun. He isn't playing like Russ Wilson can play and should be playing. I know he's locked into his contract, but I just don't have a good feeling about him. And with Sean Payton on board, he was talking big and was, making all these promises that he's not delivering. So I think we're going to be in the downswing for a while longer, unfortunately, unless something miraculous happens. But the Broncos haven't been to the playoffs since Super Bowl 50.
Right. So, how long does Sean Payton stick around, though? Are they going to try another one and done on a head coach, or are they going to give him some time to work this out?
I mean, I hope that they give him at least another year just to shake out all of the cobwebs and, that Nathaniel Hackett left and see if he can do a little bit of turnaround. The sighs of relief and the looks of relief with the Broncos fans leaving Mile High on Sunday. There was a sigh of relief when Hackett left and then perhaps a groan of what did the Broncos just do when they hired Sean Payton? And I think the groans of what did the Broncos just do are continuing.
It seems like that the Broncos might be in full sell mode with, the trade deadline coming up. I've seen lots of rumors about, really their remaining top players not named Russell Wilson being potentially traded. So, because they need draft capital really to rebuild. I mean, you think that players might get traded, some of the better players get traded, wide receivers, defensive people, and then, they try to rebuild through the draft next spring?
I think so. I know Jerry Jeudy's name has been shopped around a little bit, perhaps not even shopped around a little bit. His name keeps popping up as a trade potential. Yeah. So, and it would be a shame to lose him because he's pretty fantastic, but they just demolished all of the draft picks for several years. And I think it's going to take a while for the Broncos to pull out of that hole and get their footing back again. So I think it's going to be, again, it's going to be a tough couple of years before I see any big change.
But all in all, Katie, a good day for you. You walked away with some swag. You got 2 scarves coming in and then a brand new hat out of it. So once we sat in, we realized we were baking in the sun, and I did not bring my hat with me. And I said, well, I'm going to go buy a hat. I was hoping that they had, a hat with the Colorado flag logo on it. They didn't. I asked the woman working the stand, I said, give me the least Broncos-y hat that you have. And it ended up being this black one with the old school logo on it. And you are wearing it now because I just simply was not going to keep it.
Thank you very much. My son has already declared it his. Neil will be able to see his nephew probably on the golf course wearing it at some point. No, I actually did want to mention something, John, is that last week's podcast, you said that you were going to bring your snow pants. You probably should have brought a hat instead of the snow pants.
Well, I did bring the hat. I just didn't carry it to the game with me. Yes.
You can take the hat. You just can't hold the hat. And that's really the most important part.
I was having a good hair day. I didn't want to wear the hat.
Oh, wow.
But that hat is nice. It's a comfortable hat. I did enjoy it for the brief time that I wore it.
Oh, it's a lovely hat. I mean, I'm thoroughly enjoying wearing it right now.
Good. Keep it. It's yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, Katie, thanks for joining us.
Both today and at the game last week,
yeah.
Even though the orange definitely brought a little controversy. It was great having you with us at the game and all weekend.
Thank you for allowing me to invite myself. And I'm sorry, Jeff, that you had to miss such a fantastic game, but I also appreciate the ability and the chance to go. So thank you.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. I'm glad, like you said, that you were able to go in my stead, and certainly enjoy and keep these guys, give them some grief as well. That's good.
Count me in for 4 years in Lambeau Field. I'm going to crash this same Packers party.
Okay.
Nice.
All right, Katie, thanks for joining us. Good luck
Thanks
with the rest of the season. Overall, it was a great weekend in Denver, Colorado. We did do some sightseeing. Part of the group with us went to Red Rocks. We went to Lookout Mountain as well. Neil, you got to watch an Arsenal match with an Arsenal bar, which we know you like to do.
The Denver Gooners were great, and it was a great comeback draw against Chelsea.
And the weather was beautiful. We could not have drawn better weather for the weekend. Sunny, warm, 70s every day. Even with fall foliage up, it was a very beautiful day. We worked our way around downtown, or what they call Lodo, lower downtown Denver. And we went to the Packers Everywhere party at the Tom's Watch Bar, which is right next to Coors Field. The picture that you can see there, the 2 guest speakers of the night. If you can't identify those gentlemen, that's Walter Stanley and Don Horn. And Don Horn has a really incredible story as a first-round draft pick and a backup quarterback in Green Bay, and we'll probably talk about him some other time. But the one thing I really didn't know about him, Neil, and I didn't find out until Saturday night, he had left the NFL for a year, served in the military, and got out as a sergeant. So he and I had the same rank, and I shook his hand and I said, hey, I was also an Army sergeant as well. So thank you for that. And got a nice picture. I bring my photographer with me wherever I go. He does a great job. But I think a good crowd, as we talked about with Katie, Neil, that crowd at the Packers Everywhere party, there, it was just banging for hours.
It was a 2-floor party, and it was just Wisconsinites having fun. There was obviously different Packers jerseys from all different eras that were there. Young people, older people, people that were middle-aged. It was just a crowd that was out to have a good time. And I think the Packer Everywhere parties, the day before tailgates, are something that are certainly an enjoyable part of going on a road trip to see the Packers.
But back to the 2 gentlemen in the picture here, Neil. So Don Horn, a first-round draft pick in 1967, drafted as a quarterback when Bart Starr and Zeke Burkowski are already on the team, played with the Packers 67 to 70, and then went to the Denver Broncos. Both of these guys actually have Denver ties, and I think the reason they were there that night is because that's where they're both living now. But Walter Stanley kind of came in as one of the Forest players. Maybe not a memorable wide receiver, but he had one spectacular game with Green Bay.
Walter Stanley played for the Packers from 1985 to 1988. Was a wide receiver. I think most of us remember him mostly for his punt and kick return duties. But in 1986, a season which the Packers finished 4-12. They had a really big game against Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. The Packers ended up winning that game 44-40, and it included a Walter Stanley 21-yard touchdown pass from Randy Wright, a Walter Stanley 36-yard touchdown reception from Randy Wright, and the Packers won the game on a Walter Stanley 83-yard punt return for a touchdown, a game-winning punt return touchdown. Now, those are real asshats. I want that asshat back on my team.
Definitely an exciting game. And I did tell Walter Stanley, hey, we enjoyed watching you play. We lived through those lean years, but we enjoyed watching you as a Spark for a couple of years in Green Bay. In addition to that, we did have a great day tailgating on Sunday. We made our way around to different Packer fan celebrations. Our friend Kate, Tail Kate as she goes by, she is from Colorado, so she made her way home. We made our way to her party. We ran into two guys named Mark and Neil, of all things, and we found their tailgate party. We made our way over to a Broncos party that we were invited to for Nick and Carl, some of the podcasters in Denver as well. But then we just stumbled upon a person wearing a white number 85 jersey that on the back of it simply said, Tucker's mom. And I just walked up to her and said, are you really Tucker's mom?
And even before you question whether it was Tucker's mom, you could tell that this was the Kraft family because there were maybe 15 people that were there all wearing 85 jerseys. And it just really friendly people. Talked to Tucker's stepdad, talked to Tucker's cousin. Actually, Tucker's cousin got one of our sets of beads, and John was talking all about the Lot 1 tailgate to the Kraft family as they are going to be in Green Bay in 2 weeks.
Definitely. I never pass up an opportunity, right? So her name is Tasha, just very friendly. Met her husband, Guthrie, Tucker's stepdad, and very just genuine people. I think genuinely happy. You could tell that Tucker is in the NFL playing for the Green Bay Packers. Definitely a lot of support there. So we made our introductions. We showed her our podcast online. I showed her some pictures of the Lot 1 tailgate party. And yes, I did open up the invitation that the Kraft family is definitely welcome at the Lot 1 tailgate party, and we look forward to seeing them in Green Bay later this season. And we can't forget to mention our friend Dave, who grew up with us in Green Bay, who now lives in Baltimore, who did also join us, stayed in the condo with Neil and me. He's in the picture there. So Dave, thanks for coming out again. We had a great time driving around, looking at the sites that you can definitely see in Denver. We had a good day Monday, Neil, with a little road trip there. But the big question, we were talking about food, and we found out that Mexican food in Colorado is actually pretty good. So what was your favorite meal of the weekend?
Green chile is a specialty of the Denver area. I had 6 different meals that had green chile, including a gorgeous bowl of green chile in Wynkoop Brewery on Friday night. And I'd take any one of those meals that I had, and those are all really enjoyable because there's not a whole lot of green chili in the East Coast.
You had 6 different bowls of green, so it's sort of like the buffalo wings.
Sometimes they were topping on a breakfast burrito or on a burrito or something like that. So it wasn't all isolated green chili for every single meal, but I did do that a fair number of times because, again, I love green chili.
And my big thing was getting biscuits and gravy for breakfast. We had 3 different breakfasts, 3 different biscuits and gravies. They got better each time. The third day, the Monday ones, was a little bit spicier. I think there was a little chorizo in that gravy, and it was spectacular. So that was the one that I enjoyed the most. But it was great to, again, get to walk around. Lodo is a very walkable area in Denver. We were able to hit the sites. We didn't really talk about the Wally's Wisconsin Tavern that much. You were at the Celtic on Market for your Arsenal match. We ate at the Rio Grande restaurant. We ate at the Wynkoop, Tom's Watch Club. So I'm hoping that we hit all the places that we hit because we really had a good time in Denver. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Absolutely. And the nice thing also about going out to Colorado is that you're right by the mountains, and going out on Monday and Tuesday, going up into the Boulder Valley, getting the Palisades peaches, the end of the year Palisades peaches.
Right.
And some great mountain views. We went up to Leadville. We stayed in Breckenridge on Tuesday after John had left. Just a spectacular weekend. I cannot speak highly enough about how happy I am that we have decided to do these group road trips every year, once a year. And it's been 3 out of 3 that have been fabulous each time. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
All right. And we've already determined one of the places we probably won't go is going to be Minneapolis for a road game, but the Minnesota Vikings are coming into town this weekend. Let's just grab some final thoughts and take a look at the Vikings at Green Bay on Sunday. We're looking at temperatures in the 40s and a chance of rain. on Sunday for an outdoor matchup with the Minnesota Vikings. Jeff, they squeaked away with a win against San Francisco. What's the general consensus in your neighborhood?
Neil mentioned it. Overconfidence, perhaps. Now, the Vikings, they're a good team, especially offensively. Kirk Cousins is having a fantastic year. They still basically have no running game. Their defense is a little suspect, although they played a fantastic game. Pretty much shocked the Niners. And I know you had to watch that because your flight was delayed on the home. So obviously I watched that game with a fair amount of interest and was pretty surprised at the outcome. They really played to the level of San Francisco. Now it looks, like Brock Purdy did have a concussion on the tush push play. And so after that happened, his play definitely suffered because of that. Coming into Green Bay, the Vikings, it seems pretty daunting for the Packers. I know historically going back since 2000, the Packers have a pretty good winning percentage. They're 27-17-2 in regular season games against the Vikings. They hold the all-time, including 2 postseason contests, the all-time record. They're 65-57-3. So since 2019 under Matt LaFleur, really good games against the NFC North. So I'm hoping that continues. But man, the Vikings, they haven't really been blown out of any games. They've been losing some of the close games. But, this one coming into Green Bay, if Green Bay doesn't prepare and take this team seriously, this could be a Vikings blowout.
On the other hand, on the year, the Packers are -2 in point differential. The Vikings are -1. By Pythagorean wins, we are essentially identical teams in our win-loss record. Obviously, there is this large disparity between the Vikings' pass offense, which is 3rd in yards per game, and their run offense, which is 30th in yards per game. Packers are low 20s as far as each of those are concerned. But as far as points are concerned by offense, Packers are 17th, Vikings are 18th. We're similarly matched teams. Vikings defense is pretty middle of the road, 15th to 17th for everything that matters. The Packers pass defense is actually 8th in the NFL still this year. It's our run defense that's 30th. And so what are the Vikings weakest at? Running the ball. What are we weakest at? Stopping the run. Let's hope they just sort of forget about running, because they seem to forget about running for long stretches of games. And let's hope that they keep doing that. The other opportunity that we have, especially, is that Kirk Cousins has been sacked 15 times so far this year. If we're going to have a time for our defensive line, edge rushers, linebackers to really have an impact, I think forcing Kirk Cousins to take some hits is going to be one of those opportunities as far as the game is concerned.
And the good news, too, is that there's a guy by the name of Justin Jefferson who's on injured reserve right now, and we face him. We faced him last year. They sort of didn't really cover him. So that the fact that he's out is a positive, I think.
I hate to point it out to you, Jeff, but it seems to be a recurring theme with this season as well, to just not really cover that number one receiver of the opposing team. The other thing with the Vikings, they have not scored a rushing touchdown on the season, so expect them to get 2 on Saturday as well, because that's the way things work out.
And the other major talking point this week has been how strong the Vikings pass rush is. But it's interesting looking at the statistics of our blockers this year. Our offensive line has been much maligned this year. But when you look at the statistics and offensive tackle and interior offensive lineman win rates, Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker are 5th and 12th in the NFL in offensive tackle pass block win rates. Interior offensive line, Myers is 8th, Runyon is 13th. Overall, we are number 2 in team wins in pass blocking win rates this year. We are one of the best pass blocking teams in the NFL statistically. Now, the downside of this is that we're 29th in run blocking, and well, we've seen all of that. But fundamentally, their strength is their pass rush, but our strength is our pass blocking. And I think that we're going to see a really good battle on that game on Sunday. I'm hoping that we give Jordan Love enough time, the receivers get a little bit more experience, and that's going to be our opportunity to win the game in front of a happy and raucous Lambeau Field crowd.
That's right. We are definitely hoping to get the tailgating back up and running. This is the first home game in a month, and 3 of the 4 next Sundays at home for Green Bay. So if you do make your way to a Packer game, check out the Lot 1 tailgate party. We'll have some pictures of that and tales of tailgating, as it were, in some upcoming episodes. All right, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, Find the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat. That's all one word on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Spotify. Facebook, it's the GBC podcast, Green Bay Chat. And may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.